Morning guys, how you doing today? I'm going to talk to you today about training progression. We could call it, the hierarchy of tactical training, but it's the training progression. And there's a few strands to this, and there's a few things that kind of go wrong out there, and you can see this all over, YouTube and Instagram. And it's important to get some perspective and understanding of what we should be doing to train to become effective. This is all very much part of our warrior mindset. So we're trying to build a whole man concept here. We're trying to build ourselves up. We're trying to invest in ourselves to become better as individuals and to become better and more effective at the protectors that we should be. This is all part of your warrior mindset. I've done a talk on this and I've written about it. So there are a few strands, there's a progression, and there's kind of a loop. And I'll explain that. What goes on out there is an awful lot of shooting. And there's also, there's shooting, and there's nothing wrong with that. People do it for fun, do it as a sport, people have got different types of guns, they want to do different types of shooting, that's all great. If you're interested in becoming in developing the warrior mindset, if you're interested in developing all those facets, your physical training, your skills, your mental, all that, then you need to understand the training progression and you need to apply it in a way that is actually constructive. And invest in yourself. So shooting on itself is not that useful. We also talk about, you hear it bandied around all the time, shoot, move and communicate. It's kind of like almost like a buzzword, a buzz phrase. And that's great. It's a very simple way of explaining what small unit tactics is. We need to learn to shoot, move and communicate, but there's a few strands to that. So if we look upon this, from a sort of a military point of view, and it's important to understand that small unit tactics is a military thing, but it doesn't mean that we're trying to be in the military. We are using small unit tactics, which effectively is the same thing that a light infantry unit or a special operations or a ranger battalion or special forces or a paramilitary unit, we're all going to be using these TTPs, tactics, techniques and procedures, which is light infantry tactics, which is small unit tactics. We're applying it for our own means as a means of training and developing ourselves and making ourselves much more effective protectors. So in order to develop that, the way you could look upon it is you would work on the fundamentals of shooting and weapon manipulation, and then you'd move through your grouping and zeroing, your weapon manipulation. You'd then move through to application of fire. These are all sort of range practices. And then you'd move to what we would call transition to field firing, which is where you start to put in your things like your barricades and your movement and that kind of thing at an individual level, maybe pairs level. And then you move fully on to field firing, which is what which is live fire training out there on the training area, for which you need a facility. You need a training plan. You need all this developed. You need instructors who are qualified and experienced and capable of actually teaching this. So you can see that as a progression. And it's important for me to say that I'm not in any way anti flat range, square range, whatever you want to call it. I see it as an absolutely important part of that training progression. And it's not really just a progression, it's a loop, because what you're going to do is you're going to move through and once you get your weapon manipulation squared away, you're going to be moving on some sort of range practices, basic movement on the flat range, that kind of thing, and then you're going to move on to tactical ranges, but then you're going to loop back because you're always going to come back to the flat range to develop the things that need to be developed to prevent skill fade, and so it's a constant feedback loop of getting better and better and better as you move on. But the problem that you see is that a lot of people, they don't understand this, they don't know what they don't know, they may have instructors that don't know what they don't know, or the flip side is that instructors who don't think that civilians kind of need to know any of this stuff, or don't have the capacity, the capability, or the will to teach it, and therefore you end up with guys getting stuck on the flat range, and it just becomes sort of disappearing down the minutiae of drills that really should be part of a progression, but aren't, and those drills become an end in themselves, which is a big problem. And people think that they're becoming tactically trained, but they're not. They're just messing around on the flat range, and then because there's nowhere to go from there for whatever reason, then what you do is you get guys who just like adding stuff like, okay, let's just run pointlessly backwards and forwards, which is admirable to throw in some to PT, but if it's just no point to it, it's just like, we're going to make you run to here and then shoot and then run over there and then shoot, unless it's got an actual training benefit as part of the progression, there's not really any point doing it. And let's not, of course, forget the fun. I mean, obviously you're going to come back, you're going to have some fun, you're doing target transitions, you're going to do whatever you're going to do, and then you're going to progress, and it's all fun. And it's fun, but it's constructive. And so what we need to understand here is that as you progress, if you stay on the flat range, you're not going to develop that proper situational awareness. You're not going to develop a proper tactical understanding. You may well develop a lot of bad habits. Something like 3-gun. I don't do it, but it's probably a great sport for guys that want to do it. But if you do it, you should have the knowledge to understand where that goes wrong tactically. It doesn't mean you shouldn't do it. I mean, you can run around, do all that stuff, pew pew, all day. As long as you understand, as long as you don't think that because you're doing 3-gun, you're tactically trained. You should just know where that fits in and know that, well, yeah, really kind of doing that isn't going to work, you know, when there's enemy fire coming back at me, but I'm just doing it for sport, it's fun, but I'm fully tactically trained, so I understand that. And I've touched on this question before, so why would we push on to small unit tactics? Why not just stay plink on the flat range? Because you're investing in yourself, you're investing in your skills, and you're investing in yourself as a better protector. What's also misunderstood or not understood is that as you do these things, as you move on to small unit tactics, which should include live fire, and then it also should move on to force on force, you know, team tactics, then as you're doing that, what you're doing is you're developing things that will impact positively everything else that you do. So not only your ability to actually be a protector, but to, you know, work as a member of a team, that kind of thing, be a manager, whatever it is you do day to day, because proper small unit tactical training is going to develop that situational awareness, that communication, that teamwork, that leadership, that ability to work and operate under stress, decision making under stress, when there's all moving parts, especially, you know, when we get to how to do it on the live fire ranges. And then, you know, once you move to force on force, then of course there's less controls because there's less safety measures, and so it can be even more dynamic. That's what happens when the battery runs out on your camcorder. So to conclude, talking about the training progression, it's important to understand that we have a training progression. In order to do so, to build ourselves as warriors and protectors, to be as trained as we can be, to invest in ourselves. To do so, we have to follow the training progression, the various strands of it, building up to the actual training of small unit tactics, team tactics. To do that, obviously, to move beyond the flat range, we've got to have the correct plan of instruction. We got to have somewhere where we can actually do proper small unit tactics, and that's what we're all about as Max Velocity Tactical. We are very good at all the build-up, the flat range stuff, the weapons manipulation. We're very good at that because that's absolutely imperative or integral to reaching the pinnacle, which is the actual practice of team tactics. But we also have the facilities so we can properly do that. Be wary of just spending your life on the flat range. Thank you very much.